I'll just go down the list. So Athens Land Trust, Athens Land Trust, Action Inc.
They are not on the call.
Let's see. Okay. Let's see, the U.S. Green Building Council.
That would be Tom Lawrence.
Perfect. Thank you. 100% Athens.
Here, Mary Songster.
Great. East Athens Development Corporation.
Is not on the call.
Athens Technical College.
Not on the call.
WNA.
That's me, Amy Kassing.
Great. Georgia Business Alliance.
Yeah, Shane's not with us today.
Okay. We've got Aaron and Maria from South Base. Anyone from Athens Housing Authority?
Charlie was going to try to check in. I think he let me know that he was running behind.
Okay, great. We'll keep an eye out for him joining then.
And Ilka did the same thing from economic development.
Okay, great. Athens area home builders.
Newland, General Construction.
Great, thank you. Sorry for any background noise, everybody. Great, and anyone else from Athens-Clarke County?
Beth with Facilities Management.
I'm Sayla Gardner with the Inclusion Office.
Great.
And Mike Wharton with Sustainability.
And then GreenLink, we have, I think Sam's here as well, but you want to introduce yourselves officially.
Hey, Samantha from GreenLink.
Hi, everyone. I'm Diamond Spratling from GreenLink Analytics.
And I don't know if Matt has joined yet, but he said he's on his way.
Great. We'll keep an eye out for him as well. Perfect. Objectives. So we're just going to do a quick review just to let everyone know about the survey. We're going to go over briefly the plan, and then most of this meeting will be Diamond discussing their GreenLink equity map and the ongoing equity scope that we're added. So this is really going to be Diamond's show. Okay, so we're going to review tiered pathways survey results. I'm just bringing the slide back up for anyone just to see the different tiers. So the survey closed January 14th, I believe, Friday. We've had good response rate, and we're working currently right now to kind of format it to be a little bit more visual and understanding. So we'll get that to ACC and to y'all soon. Did anyone have any questions on the survey? Or I know there were a couple of issues in terms of the links. I just want to make sure everyone who tried was able to take the survey.
Eventually we did. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. That's technology, for all it's good, comes with many risks. But thank you so much for sticking with us on that. I'm clicking all the links we sent out. It came through eventually. Thank you. Okay, so if there's no questions on the survey or any issues, we can go to the plan discussion, which I believe will be Sam.
Yeah, so has anyone had a chance to look at chapters 1 through 3? They were sent out in that email. Once we go through your comments or any suggestions, we'll be putting those within the plan within the next couple of weeks. I know that the first draft is due February 12th, so we want to make sure we're getting as much as we can in before that first commission meeting. And then I guess we can also talk about just brief highlights here if anyone has any overall thoughts. if we have no overall thoughts that are not put it in the plan, I can go ahead and talk about what's coming up in the next chunk. So this first chapter or first block was chapters 1 through 3, kind of discussing what the plan is, community survey responses, and just the overall community engagement. The second block of the draft is going to include more technical information around the pathways that were chosen for a clean energy, like multiple clean energy scenarios. And we also go in on a separate chapter for economic development. So as you can see with this slide here, the economic development chapter, I've been working a lot with Ilka and other partners from Athens to kind of break out just how many jobs will be created through each scenario within the ACES tool. But also talking about where Athens-Clarke County stands now, breaking down what job creation means, so making it easier to understand. And then we're also talking about workforce development and what that means engagement-wise with business owners, community organizations, and other education centers. I did want to point out that I did a couple call-out boxes, and this doesn't have to be an official statement. Again, this is kind of a work in progress. We did call out the Rivian EV plant and potential workforce development with those plans and just partners within Athens. So we don't really need to dive into it during this meeting if we don't want to spend too much time on it, but I will put my email in the chat and we can also kind of coordinate through there if anyone has any great ideas of what to bring forward with the economic development. But of course, I'll see the chapters before it's published. So.
Sam, I would hope that there would be part of that with one element of the economic development would include opportunities to work with chamber, business and industry to more holistically integrate some lessons learned and opportunities between the business and industry community in Athens-Clarke County.
All right, I have written that down. You said the chamber of, what was it?
Well, there's actually two chambers, so we want to make sure that both of our chambers are represented.
Okay.
The Chamber of Commerce as well as the Black Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
And other agencies that are promoting economic development or economic sustainability.
All right, awesome. I've got that written down. Anyone have any other, I guess, big suggestions that are currently in that or should be in the economic development chapter? I mean, I did call out Athens Tech, and there was that one program, it's something in mind, but with the high school, I think like the Clarke County like high school education, like apprenticeship, things like that. But is there anything else that really stands out?
Well, I'm happy to see that you put the Clarke County School District in there because I think that is a key partner. And I'd like to see that one pretty emphasized as well for those opportunities between economic development and the high schools. I think that's great.
All right, cool.
Yeah, it's more than just economic development too, but it's in that section. It's people development.
Yeah, I think we put a big emphasis on workforce development, training, kind of getting the word out of these EV job or not EV energy, clean energy jobs, and kind of working with community organizations to make sure that recruitment is targeted towards them and is in a more inclusive way that doesn't necessarily like scare people into thinking that there's misinformation, I guess. So we're making sure to call that out. Certificate programs with Athens Tech.
And Sam, one of the things that I think gets oftentimes overlooked in economic development is the element of the ecological sustainability that needs to go along with it for long-term community sustainability. So at least a shout out or some reference to the need for preserving our ecosystem services to support the economic development that takes place in the community.
Okay. All right, these are great notes.
We move on to the next. I know you've got block 2 as well, if you want to move on to that, Sam.
Yeah, so kind of within the block 2 section, besides the economic development, this is just kind of something to look forward to as we bring the draft towards you guys, but we've got the pathway to clean energy. So like I said, just describing what ACES is and how decisions are guided. And right now we're looking at 2 scenarios. So we're looking at a cost-effective scenario and then just a map scenario, basically saying if we were to throw any and all resources towards clean and renewable energy, what do the outcomes look like? Again, we can have this discussion now or we can have it later. If anyone has any ideas of different scenarios they want to look at, I'm open ears. We've used those 2 scenarios in the past with other clean energy plans, so most people were receptive to those, but you talk about it now. Or email again. And then the next chapter, we're also going to be talking about the community-wide goals. So these are that policy matrix and all the tiers that you all agreed upon within that survey that Maria sent out. And then the final chapter will be talking about next step and commitment. So that chapter is still in progress as we kind of move forward with these conversations. I'll be taking notes to figure out, you know, what Athens wants to highlight as their next steps and commitments, like what is definitely laid down on paper and isn't just a, you know, a coordination or something hypothetical. So if anyone has any ideas for that, please let me know, either in the chat or email or now.
So 2 things jump to mind very quickly. We will need an equity chapter as well. I believe Diamond's going to be working on that. Under the pathways to clean energy, I think it's really important for transparency that we acknowledge that all decisions come with a cost. There's no 100%. And well, 2 things. One is, what are the assumptions around the 100% clean and renewable? Because most people don't understand it's not converting every house and every rooftop to solar. There's an assumption of what we're capable of actually doing, and that assumption drives. That's kind of a little bit of the disconnect between 100% because it's 100% of what we think we can do versus 100% of all rooftops, and that needs to be. It's really important to make sure that distinction is there so that people don't make the assumption that we're trying to convert every rooftop to solar, because that's not feasible. The second part of that is every decision that's made does have a cost to it. There's no such thing as a silver bullet or a zero-sum game in this. If you're making panels or batteries, you're still mining land right now to do that. And we need to make sure that there's open understanding that basically we're making the best decisions among a bunch of really hard choices that we have, and not that we think that doing this is going to be 100% neutral in its impact.
Mike, can I ask a question? Because
Absolutely.
sometimes I get confused here. So, and as part of, you know, what prompted that was both a conversation I had this morning with some other group, and then this right here. So we talked about the 100% of all rooftops, et cetera. You know, we're still talking about, you know, setting the goal of what 2035, 100% just for Athens-Clarke County operations, not the entire county, right?
That's correct. The entire county is 2050.
Yeah, and I think that needs to be, well, I mean, it's hard to tell by the PowerPoint, but again, that might be confusing. So
Good point. Good point. That we do have a 2-tier goal in this effort. And under each one of those goals, are there going to be some assumptions, like even if we go 100% for converting all of Athens-Clarke County, we're still going to have RECs that we're going to have to purchase if we want to truly achieve 100%. So, and understanding what that means. And that's going to be a very hard concept for people to grasp is, and then what does that look like for the larger community? So we really need to kind of frame that out very clearly and in a language that people can readily identify with.
Yeah, these are all.
I hate to weigh
I'm
in on this because I've only been tacitly at the meetings, and Michael, of course, is more well-versed. I have some concern over a two scenario, like either this or this. It seems like it might be useful to like those storybooks where you make your own ending, where like if we meet this metric, then we can go in this direction or this direction. This metric gets us to this direction. Because really there is no bifurcated situation where we either do this or we do this. You know, we're going to have to keep figuring it out as we reach each metric. Does that make sense?
It does. Now, my assumption was that you're going to talk about kind of what you're seeing as a attainable, cost-effective option, and then kind of the range that would go up to 100%. So it's are you addressing it? I think to Mary's point, is it being addressed as a range where there are things in between, or is it going to be just two very very distinct lines? I think that would be important too.
Yeah,
Is to talk about there's a range. I think you're right. There's this kind of this range from doing nothing to doing everything we can. So what does that mean? And then why do we pick what we did as examples?
That's a good point. Yeah, we do so far kind of just talk about like before choosing these two pathways, there's kind of a summary of like users can choose whatever they want. For the purpose of reading this plan, here are kind of the results of the cost effective one and the max one. But I can make sure to frame it more as like, these aren't absolute results. You know, you can pick something in between. As you said, Mike, kind of a range. So that's a good point.
Hey Sam, this is Matt Cox. Just want to ping in with one other consideration and thinking through that. And that you're not really looking at variation that's only across one line either, right? Like you're looking at job creation that's going to be its own spectrum, cost effectiveness is its own spectrum, public health benefits is its own. So there's like actually kind of this multivariate, like 6-dimensional perspective if you wanted to get real deep with it. And so I think you can frame that up in the draft, and we'll make sure that that's kind of reflected there. But I just want to make sure that like we have an understanding. It's actually kind of more than just like a 2D line chart that you're going to be exploring and living through.
It's not going to be an easy concept to get across. So we're watching, Sam. Just letting you know, no pressure.
Well, I feel better because some of the stuff that you did suggest, I have been kind of drafting up already. So now I can focus all of my attention on conveying this message properly.
Other folks have thoughts to share with Sam? Okay.
I did, John, just one real quick thing. So in the, I guess the draft, are the everything that was tiered, are those going to be kind of grouped or labeled as those different tiers, or was that just for us to rank them?
So right now I had an idea of just kind of, I had like a color-coded table basically that breaks it out by what kind of category it is. So is it transportation, energy efficiency, whatever, and then kind of color coding it to tiers, explaining what the tier system is, and just saying members of the CAB took a look at these policy options. This is what it would mean for Athens, and this is how it was tiered. That doesn't have to go in that way, and we can, you know, maybe go back and forth and kind of figure out what we want that to look like. So if anyone has any ideas, let me know.
Sam, let me
Picture.
make sure I got I'm envisioning this correctly, you've got basically three color codes, level 1, level 2, and level 3. And then we have inside each one of those three color codes, we have it divided out by that pathway, like transportation, green infrastructure, buildings. So it's kind of a three big pictures, and then we subdivide those by the actual pathway itself. Is that kind of the thoughts right now?
Yeah, it's close. Instead of it, so basically it's broken out. The colors are the categories. So say blue is community, yellow is transportation. And then within that category, it'll be like light blue is 1, medium blue is tier 2, and dark blue is tier 3. And then the same with the yellow colors and the orange. I can send over just a draft of the Excel sheet I have for people to look over and give thoughts to. I don't know what the best way to go forward with that is, or if that's just too much, but yeah.
Well, I'll jump in, and I recognize that my brain does not function like the majority of people's, so I get to say the dissenting voice first, and then everybody else can pile on and tell me how theirs works better, and that's okay. I would imagine that from a community comprehension standpoint, we would list our tier 1 things first, our tier 2 things second, and our tier 3 things third. And then that we would, underneath each one of those tiers, would have the pathway of what that is like. And those would be consistent from one tier to the next. So you're going to look for all the buildings at the top, and maybe transportations might be next. And so whatever that order is under one, you see that same order under the other two, so that they can see because I think the focus is going to be on those tier 1 projects and some focus on tier 2. Now, if that's not the way other people see it, then please speak up, because this is where, either now or through the chat or whatever, but this is where we're trying to give them some guidance on what goes next.
And like I said, apologize for sort of butting in on this, but so when we talk about these tiers though, and we look at the options, it seems like if we break them down that way, it will be hard to discuss or examine the equity issue. Am I wrong in that? I mean, how does equity fit into the explanation?
So I think there's two things that are going to happen. One is from what the goal of what I understand Diamond's going to talk about is, we want to get to the point where we have benchmarks for our either overall benchmarks for each, that we examine all of the pathways by as the action plan, the actual steps get developed. Or in some cases, we might have very specific things under that particular pathway that we would want to see us check against as we move forward. So everything that we're going to be doing in the implementation phase, where you create those action steps, are going to be looked at. We'll be looking at those benchmarks, one of which will be equity. That's at least my understanding of the process. Now, if somebody has a better idea of that, how that could go, we're all ears. Okay. Mary, does that, I mean, do you have some other ideas there? I mean,
I'm just thinking about, like, I'm sort of a planning and promotions person. So when you are rolling it out to the community, what they want to know is, how does this relate to me? Or, they write off very quickly saying, I don't see myself here. And so I just want to make sure that we show people, like, that the people see themselves, in our community, see themselves in this plan. And I mean, that's easy for me to say. It's a hard place to put it. So instead of thinking of it being obviously baked in, like, I want to obviously bake it in so that people can see themselves in this plan and feel part of it.
so Diamond, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, Mary, that was a really valid point, and that's actually where a lot of my role in this entire process will come in. I actually read the entire chapters 1 through 3 this morning and just started going through and identifying places where we need to do a better job and making sure that we're targeting communities that traditionally are not in this process of creating those clean energy plans, and just in the process in general. So that's what I've been doing and still doing it, but would definitely want to lean in on you all in your thoughts, especially during the charrette, which I'll talk a little bit about later. But that's exactly right. I mean, when I was going through reading the plan, even thinking back to the survey results, and that we didn't have a lot of representation from underrepresented groups. So we'll have to go back and figure out what we're going to do with that, because it's hard for someone to read that plan and say, oh, this is about me. I would stop reading after that survey part, because I'm like, well, you didn't gather my thoughts, or I don't feel included in those responses. And so we have to figure out what we're going to do about that. But I'm going to be supporting that role.
And I think what I think we've all kind of talked about off and on is, as we go through the pathways, how we need to make sure that there is a way for people to see how they, as Mary said, fit in. That applies to them, and I think that's one of the things. Not just the chapters. That's one of the things. So just in general, that's one of the things Diamond's going to be looking at, is the entire publication, with that in mind. But we're also very interested, and this is, I understand, Diamond, that this is what the charrette's supposed to address, is those very specific pathways. So how do we make sure, as those pathways are rolled out, we've created that opportunity for people to see themselves in those pathways? Is that helpful? Does any other thoughts or feedback from folks on that?
Not specific
Quiet.
about that, but kind of just getting back to the 3 tiers. Is it even possible to somehow figure out like a percentage, like tier 1 represents 50% of our goal, or tier 2 represents 20%, just so people can, I mean, because people can read everything and see, and a lot of it hopefully will make sense, but just to be able to distill it down, I just don't even know if that's possible for people who like numbers and want to say, oh well, if we just do all of tier 2 or all of tier 1, we'll be 50% to the overall goal. I just don't even know if that's possible with so many variables involved.
Matt, you got a reaction to that?
Absolutely do. Yeah, unfortunately, it's not something that we can easily pull because even though we've got a reasonable idea of even what the policies we'd look at would be, there's going to be differences in what might get drafted and put into any sort of legislation that was adopted, or program design decisions that would be different for each one of them throughout. So we could do, I think, ballpark, you could try to take ACEs and take a look at those policy options that are coming out in the different tiers and use those to try to assess what level of aggressiveness you're getting. What percent of the total potential that ACEs has identified are we likely to get through here with kind of typical policy outcomes. But it's one of the pieces that we've almost kind of intentionally not tried to graph here, not tried to estimate here, just because there's so many specifics that we need to get worked through on each individual policy option to give an estimate, to give a quantitative estimate. I think the matrix, the index that we've all kind of worked through, the policy options and scoring, gives us a sense, a little more of like a qualitative sense, as to the effectiveness that we're expecting to see, and the impact we're expecting to see from each of the policy options. But it's not getting us to the point where we're going to say, 2,000 metric tons of CO2 avoided by this transit plan if we adopted that, and we're going to see our overall clean energy supply jump from 20% to 30% if we picked up these 4 policy options and deployed those.
I think Tom's point is a good one in that it could be more like Farmville, where you could just show how much healthier our farm is getting. We don't have to actually promise an exact amount, but I do think giving some kind of indication of what that means in the overall community, it's very digestible. Like, and I mean, it can have an asterisk saying this is an estimate, but we don't have to give the metric tons, I don't think, but we have to show how this is, literally blossoming in the community, where it starts here and grows here. How's it going? And, and it doesn't have to be exact. It just has to be a concept.
Yeah, a concept or a range, because I think at least some people's fears would be, oh, that's great. Well, if we do all of tier 1 and we're only 5% to our overall goal, I'm just making that up, then there's no way that we could get to 100% if we have to do all these tier 2 and tier 3 things that some are not even legal, and on and on and on. So I don't know. I think just, again, if we could, I like how Mary put that, if it could be done graphically or ranges or whatever, but I think just to give people an idea of how these tiers play into the overall goal.
So are y'all thinking, John and Mary, y'all thinking like something along the line of a thermometer or some bucket that says if we do it to this level, we'll achieve this much of what we can accomplish, and this level we got. So kind of showing those. Now, to Matt's point, there are multiple prongs. So, going up, rising up, so that people can visually or graphically see how achieving different parts of that will fill up the bucket. Is that?
I'm going to say in an era of extreme climate change that neither thermometers or buckets are very good visuals anymore.
Okay.
That's kind of like, so a visual might be like like a sunshine, like whole sun, like whole part, so you can't, I think you could easily have a graphic that represents parts, and that would be important to people to understand where the easy part is and where the hard part is. I would totally stay away from thermometers at this stage of the game.
But the thing is a visual that gets filled in as we achieve goals. It's
Yes. And so that could be over,
yeah.
and that would help if they're overlapping, because like you said, it's like a 6-dimensional. I mean, this is a Rubik's Cube. It's not a piece of paper. So if you do have a graphic, those things can overlap. So where the green jobs come in with the, greater independent energy creation, or however the tiers are structured, you can overlap them.
Okay, for South Face and Green Link, does that create clarity?
It somewhat creates clarity. I think I will want to discuss with Matt a little more on kind of what we're thinking, but I'm wondering, like this first draft is due February for the commission, and I'm wondering, would this be something that's okay, like say we can't figure it out in the next week or two, to put in this like further plan?
Well,
I just don't want to say, yes, I promise I can do this in 3 weeks, but maybe I can't.
I think I'd have to go back and look, but I believe what I'm trying to put together for the mayor and commission is chapters, essentially what we're calling chapters 1 through 3, which are what I would refer to them to as a preliminary report, which outlines existing conditions, just what we've done, and the public engagement. It's really not these are so the purpose would be to go ahead and release what we did and what we found, and then not what we're recommending. So that when we get to what we're recommending at the next phase with the mayor and commission, they are looking at those things and not trying to figure out the whole plan at one time. They've already had a chance to digest, what we did and what people said. And then they would be focused on what we recommend based upon that. So that's a different, we really are already finished with that section just because we've already done all that stuff. And we're just writing it up and getting a format and getting it ready for publication. So there shouldn't be any changes. There's actually nothing new to add to that section at this point.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes perfect sense.
I mean, if everyone's kind of good reviewing all of this, are there any final comments for Sam or Greenlink? Otherwise, we can move forward and talk more about the equity portion. Okay. We're gonna hand it over to Diamond at this point. Diamond, would you prefer to share your screen and control it, or I can control it from mine as well?
You can control it for now, and I'll let you know when I need to do a screen share for the gym app.
Okay, sounds good.
Yep, thank you. All right, hi everyone. Again, my name is Diamond Spratling, and I'm with Greenlink Analytics. I'm the gym project manager, and you're going to figure out what gym is really quickly in a few moments through the next slide. But I'm going to first actually tell you about an introduction to the Greenlink Equity Map, also known as GEM. Next slide, please. So what is GEM? Hopefully you've already heard about it, but in case you haven't, it's short for our Greenlink Equity Map. Again, it is an online tool that really helps cities and community-based organizations better understand and better visualize those equity-related issues and burdens that we see across our neighborhoods, across our cities, across our communities. So that's GEM. I have a screenshot here so that you can kind of see what the platform looks like. The screenshot, I'll be honest, does not do it justice. So I'm going to actually navigate to the actual tool, the live tool, in a few slides. Next slide, please. So over 180 cities have actually committed to clean energy across the US, Athens included. I mean, go us. We did a great job. We said that we want to commit to clean energy like other cities across the country, which is great. But what Greenlink wants to do and what GEM does is help cities go from committing to clean energy to actually doing something about it, actually getting into a position where they can create data-driven practices, programs, implementations, or projects around clean energy, but of course, centering that around equity, because we know that you cannot essentially have one without the other. Next slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how GEM even came about, the development of GEM. So we actually consulted with tons of equity leaders from across the entire country. We actually have a national core group team that really helped to guide us in putting together GEM. We wanted to make sure that we were very equitable in that process and that it would best serve our communities, our community-based organizations, and especially vulnerable populations who traditionally are not aware of the energy burdens in their communities. We also conducted over 100 interviews now, and that helped us to determine, well, what type of indicators or what type of pieces of data do we want to include into the GEM platform? This was very critical because we needed to know whether communities wanted to know more about their asthma rates. Are they interested in their energy burden, income levels, different things like that, which we know are all intersected between each other. So we did do those interviews so that we can better understand and select different indicators to go into the GEM platform, which I'll talk about those. The next thing that we did was we developed the GEM process guide, and this was for city community partnerships, but also other organizations and other counties can also utilize this tool. And I'll have one of my colleagues, or I'll drop the link into the chat after the slide. But the process guide was very integral so that we can actually tell people how to best work with communities. You know, we say we want to create these amazing plans, we want to do all this great work, but we have to remember that we have to work with our communities and community-based organizations so we can better understand, well, what are their needs? What are the areas where they are struggling the most? So that GEM process guide is publicly available to anyone and everyone on our website. It's just on equitymap.org. You can click on the resources and you'll see that process guide, and it'll walk you through the best practices for working collaboratively with our community organizations. Next slide. So as I mentioned before, we have actually over 30 different equity indicators within the GEM platform, 33 to be exact. Just to go through a few of them, I have listed here. Energy burden, so the percent of your annual income that you're spending on utilities. We are looking at the average burden, neighborhoods that have high burden, and also households that are severely burdened by energy. Same thing for water burden and gas, and even electric as well. We're looking at the racial composition, so you can know, well, which demographics are most burdened by energy. For example, we're looking at income stress, internet accessibility, which has been crazily been looked at and more popular now because we are in this virtual space given the pandemic, where a lot of us have to work from home. We have to be around some type of internet source so that we can essentially be connected to the world. Eviction rates, living costs, housing burden, housing type. So whether or not you are in a single family or multifamily home, and multifamily could be like apartment homes, for example. And then home ownership. Are you renting a home, or are you in a privileged space where you are a home owner? So those are a list of some of the indicators that we currently have in the platform, but we're also going to be adding a few others over the next year. Next slide. So I just wanted to share a little bit about how other cities are actually using GEM across the country. And I can also drop a link in the chat so if you're interested in others. But Richmond, Virginia is actually doing some really great work. So they use GEM in order to kind of help inform their full decarbonization plan, which was very successful and actually led to the expansion of their public transit programming. So that was a really great example. Albuquerque, this was a very unique case. They were actually working with a few nonprofit organizations, including SWEEP, and they really pushed for an equitable clean energy legislation across New Mexico, so across the entire state. And this actually led to them doing a whole GEM presentation to the Department of Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm, which was really awesome. And then the last example that I have here is actually with Denver. So we are working with the city of Denver to help them design a policy package that ended up turning into a very regressive carbon tax ballot initiative. And so within that initiative, we had an entire target around equity, enforcing equity. So this included targeted program delivery and bill assistance, which was, as we know, something that's very critical for serving our vulnerable populations. And then we also helped to identify what kind of energy efficiency investments were proven to have the best impact, or really target different communities and neighborhoods across the city of Denver. So those are just a few examples, but we have, I believe, like almost hundreds of different case studies where different cities and counties have actually been using GEM. Next slide. Thank you. So you're probably thinking, well, that was great, but how in the world should Athens use GEM? So there are many ways that we can use GEM in order to advance equity. And the first way is very evident in actually using it to help guide our clean and renewable energy plan. We should be looking at data before we go into the implementation phase so that we can know what areas and what communities and what type of projects are most critical to our community. The second thing here is to help us identify, well, which neighborhoods across Athens have the highest energy burdens, which areas have high asthma rates, for example. And so that really helps us to better understand, well, what type of programs do we need? Do we need a climate and health program, for example? And who do we need to bring to the table to help put together that initiative? Last thing on here, kind of touched on this also, but for our programs and initiatives, helping to better understand and address those inequities in Athens is another critical way that you can use GEM. Next slide. So the next thing here, I just wanted to outline a few reasons or why GEM is actually critical for Athens. So one, I think that is very helpful in helping Athens make those data-driven decisions. So as I mentioned before, I know we're used to just creating all types of programs and initiatives just because, you know, we saw New York City do it or it looked great, but we need to create programs that are specific to the needs of the people and the residents in Athens. So GEM helps you to do that so that you can have make data-driven decisions. The next thing on here, so what we also include when you have access to GEM is access to our National Community of Practice group. And that is a group of over 400 people, city staff, community-based organizations, just community members. And there's over 400 of them in the entire community of practice. And it allows us to share best practices, lessons learned, kind of advise each other. We do peer consultancies where a city or a county comes in and says, hey, I'm having issues working with this community, or I need help putting together our equity plan. We've run into a roadblock. And so we get to lean on each other and kind of help share, well, I've done this in my city and things like that. So that really helps to put together a community of people who are all invested in equity, but sometimes come through a few roadblocks every here and there. The last thing on here is, I think that GEM is really good for just being able to show that Athens really is prioritizing equity. And I think that that is probably one of the most critical pieces here. We're saying that we want to be very equitable. We're saying that we care about it, but now we're showing that we are using data and we are looking at and prioritizing communities that are experiencing burdens, and we're using that to create our programs, and we want them to be very effective. Next slide. Okay, so this is the fun part where I get to show you all GEM. Maria, can I have screen share privileges? Let's see.
I stopped sharing, so hopefully you can now.
Okay. Okay, it doesn't look like I'm sharing. Okay. Okay, I'm hoping everyone can see this. If not, stop me, let me know. But this is GEM, again, the Greenlink Equity Map. I have it right now centered on Athens, and we're looking at utility burden by neighborhood average. And I'm going to turn on the indicator that includes water too, because we want to see electricity, we want to see gas, and we want to see water. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that we can see exactly how energy burden changes across Athens. And so you'll see as I'm hovering over, these two areas here have this very dark color, purple. And so this is indicating these are areas that have higher energy or higher utility burden. And I'm always interested to know if this is something similar to what you all are expected to see. Feel free to let me know in the chat. But we can see in the dark purple colors that total energy burden is up to almost 26% in some areas, which is outrageously high. If you're above 10%, that means you are severely burdened. So we're looking at areas that are extremely high, but we also have areas that have lower energy burden still. This is at about 8%. So this is still high energy burden in general. But we can see this area here is pretty low at about 3%, so about average here. But you can just see what the breakdown is based off of census tract in neighborhood when we're just looking at energy burden in general within Athens. And I can do that with any of those indicators that I just talked about. So if we want to look at asthma rates, for example, we can see asthma is pretty high also within those same two areas that we looked at before. We're able to see what that relationship is. But if I want to see closer, like what the relationship is between energy burden and asthma, because we know that both of the two are correlated, I'm able to overlay the two indicators, which is what I'm about to do now. So let me just open the legend really quickly so you can know. That dark teal bluish color, those are areas that have high asthma rates and high energy burden. So I'm going to go back here and we can see which areas they are that have both high asthma rates and high utility burden. And it seems like, we can kind of see a trend here. It seems to be these same kind of three census tracts here that are always having the higher burdens here. I'm going to go through and show a few other indicators so that you all can see too. We can do racial demographics, and this will allow us to see the breakdown for each racial group here in Athens. Just hovering over so that you all can see what that racial distribution is too. If I want to, go ahead.
Simon, it may be a little complicated to look at it with the second indicator.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Okay, so this may be a little bit easier for you to see kind of what that racial breakdown or distribution is here. And again, we can do this for all of the racial groups that we have within GEM. And I can do this with any of the indicators. We have health insurance stress here too. We know that's another very critical indicator. And we can see what the median income, household income is for that track, but also the number of households who have indicated that that they are stressed by health insurance. I want to show also areas that have eviction rates. Here, maybe not this one. Let me go down and show the areas that are renters versus owners. So if I just want to see which areas are renter occupied, it will show me here. So this census tract has about almost 84% renters as opposed to 16 or 17% owner occupied. 100% renter occupied here, down here. Wow, this seems to be kind of near University of Georgia. And we can do this for single family versus multi-family homes too. I'll show that one really quickly. So housing type, if I just wanted to see which areas are multi-family, I can do that too. And seems to be these same two areas where we're seeing percentage.
Kind of on that line, and just to ask a question, because how does this talk about like a UGA student dorm? Are they maybe part of the reasoning for why that darker area is further on down? I'm speculating. I know it's a difficult way to sort it out.
Yeah, that's a great question. And Matt or Sam, maybe you have more thoughts, but I think I don't think that the dorms would be included, because I would think that most of our data comes from census tract data. So I would think that they would be tracking their household, like their hometowns, versus where they're staying in their dorms. But I don't know if anyone has any other thoughts. It's a great thought.
It's a mix. So there are some that do establish their residency, and their impacts on local income levels would be reflected as a part of the survey data set, to the extent that they're tracked. So like this is driven by the American Community Survey data sets. A lot of the information here is, not all of it, but like housing data or income data will be coming from that census survey. And they attempt to reach about 1% of the US population each year. So to the extent that they are being surveyed and they do fall into the group that have established Athens residency, you would see their information reflected in this. And that is part of an explanation that you do see in a lot of the communities that do have a very large university footprint, wherever you've got student housing predominantly residing, you see an effect.
Yeah, and I don't think that changes what we do. It's like a footnote, really.
Absolutely.
Along those lines, Matt, I think there would be some things that would really be helpful as part of this as we move forward. One would be to be able to overlay the boundaries of our commission districts so that you can see how these census tracts fall within the Athens-Clarke County Commission districts. Of course, they're probably going to redraw them soon. So
I would say the current ones or the
yeah, we're going from 10 to 7, which
the refinagled ones.
yeah, I'll reserve my disappointment my comments on that. But and then the other would be where's the UGA footprint, and just as an outline, not as a, again, so people can see as they look at these things, it's relevant to decision making. And the last one would be the congressional districts. So those kind of political divides are helpful to overlay the census blocks, because that also is questions. Our commissioners absolutely look at their district, and that will make a difference as we move forward with decisions as well.
For UGA, clunkily, but they only house a certain percentage, a relatively small percentage. So whatever the remaining population is housed somewhere else in Athens, not on campus. So you could at least, there's some aggregating that could be done. But it wouldn't be exact.
I was just thinking too, just from a standpoint of knowing what the UGA footprint looks like over these census tracts it's just helpful when you're looking at the data coming out of that footprint.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Those should be pretty easy for us to pull together. So one of the nice things that GEM is set up to do is to give us the ability to export the map from the platform and drop it into a format that goes just like straight into a PowerPoint slide. So if we found the overlays that we needed to make, we should be able to impose them on each other and create them.
So do you need GIS layers to do that?
Probably a PNG file or just an image would be easier to work with than a shape file for that.
You do have the shape files readily available, though. That would also be helpful. I could maybe do something with that.
And send them to you, Sam, or to Matt, or both?
You can CC me, but Sam will be the lead for it.
Okay, what I'll do is reach out to our GIO office and ask them to forward those shape files to you guys.
Cool. All right. Okay, so this was Jim. I'm going to stop share and pass it back over to Maria to share the slides, please.
Can I ask a quick question, Diamond? I'm assuming, Maria, are we going to the next phase, or I didn't want to interrupt with my question.
The next phase was just me getting into the equity scope, so you can go ahead with your question.
No, go ahead. Go through the equity scope because it may answer the question.
Okay. Okay. So the last thing that I'll mention about GEM is that that we do allow our community-based organizations who are eligible in Athens to have access to GEM, which I think is very critical so that our community members can know what's going on and know what the data looks like. Next slide. So now I'm going to actually go through what the plan is for the Athens equity scope. Next slide. So there are 4 different components in this process and actually creating an equitable clean energy plan. And the first is that 1-year gym subscription, hence why I just did an entire demo on the platform, and I'll get into on the next slide of what that includes. Then I'll go through and talk about helping to define Athens' commitment to equity. That'll be a very critical piece in the plan, hosting a charrette, which we'll do with the group, and then developing an accountability framework for Athens. And I'll explain what that is later. Next slide. Okay, so we're actually going to be doing a 1-year gym subscription for Athens. So 3 staff members will have access to gym. I think Mike already set yours up. So we're just waiting on 2 more, but you'll have access to the Athens-Clarke County. So you'll be able to see what the data looks like. Again, as Matt was saying, you can export that data too. So you'll be able to do that. And you'll also have access to 6 years worth of data. So traditionally, gym data is for 1 year, but what we're working on and putting into the platform is allowing users to be able to have access to data dating back from 2013. And so this will be very critical so that you all can better understand, well, have we improved over time? What progress have we made? You know, where can we do better? And so that'll kind of help show what those trends have been over the past couple of years. Next slide. The second part of the equity scope is actually helping you all in Athens to define what you mean when you say you are committed to equity. We need to be very clear in creating a definition or creating a way that Athens is saying that we are defining or referring to as equity. So this kind of goes back to my point I mentioned before in going through each of those chapters, which is what I'm doing right now in chapters 1 through 3, to make sure that we are in fact addressing those equity concerns that the community has told us about numerous times. And so going back and making sure that we are clearly communicating that so that we are holding ourselves accountable and that the community can see that we are in fact committed to equity. And this will also include a few graphics and things like that within the plan to really show our equity efforts. Next slide. The third thing on here is hosting the charrette. And so this will actually include bringing together those leading local equity focused organizations to really make sure that we are being very equitable in our entire plan, make sure that everyone has seen the plan, that they agree with everything that's there, because we don't want to just say that, oh, we put together this plan without showing it to anyone else. We want to be able to consult with our community and get their thoughts and their guidance before making the report actually public. And this will also, of course, include ensuring that all of the equity concerns that the community has expressed are actually addressed. And so that will, you all will be a part of that process as well. Next slide. So the last thing that is a part of this equity scope here is going to be developing an accountability framework for Athens. So we've done this in the past with other cities and other organizations, but what it'll do is also make sure that on an internal and external phase, that we are holding ourselves accountable and we are, in fact, doing the things that we said we were. You know, we said that we were going to commit to equity. We said we were going to create this project or this program, but we need to hold ourselves accountable and have it like on a dashboard, on a tool that is publicly available so that the community and community-based organizations can hold us accountable for that as well. So this will be a very critical piece in that monitoring and evaluation phase of after we've set out all the things we said we would do, we would be moving them onto this accountability framework so that we can better track what our progress is in areas that we need to improve. So that is the accountability framework, and super excited about this one and get some accountability in there. Next slide. All right, so that's all that I had for the equity piece. If anyone has any questions, definitely let me know. If not, I can pass it back over to Maria to close it up.
Actually, I have something for Mike based on Diamond's presentation. A problem that we have that I'm sure every community has is that while the Office of Sustainability is working on our 100% renewable energy initiative plan and the SPLOST oversight committee, the departments get very siloed. So it does seem like that this tool would be a good tool. We be sharing it with the other departments so that everybody can be on the same page for the plan, to work towards kind of like cross-pollinating between like planning and, central services, or, utilities, public works. And because I don't think we do enough of that. And this seems like a good beginning point for that kind of communication. That's not really a question. Sorry, Mike. It's my only
That's
meeting.
okay. I know it doesn't seem like there's a lot of cross-departmental talk and chatter that does occur that I know people don't see. We've tried to make it a hallmark of anything we propose, as y'all have seen from our T-SPLOST submissions, that they be comprehensive and multi-departmental instead of single. But there's always more that can be done, so you're right. It's always a challenge inside government. One of the other things I want to make sure there's not an undue expectation. We will lead the CAB group through the GEM process first. That will then inform the plan. The plan then goes before the mayor and commission in a work session. And then if there's another charrette for the community, that's when that will happen. We can't get ourselves caught up in a situation where we go through the process with the public before the commission has a chance to even see the plan. They will then get feedback, as I explained to Diamond and folks at our last meeting. The last thing you want to do is have the commission trying to field questions from the public on the plan that they haven't even seen yet. So I just want to make sure that that's clear from the presentation, that's the format we have to take. And I have a question for Diamond and for Matt. We have pathways that we have developed. We got 60 something of those. You also presented in the plan what that the GEM is supposed to help with our programs and initiatives to help address equity. The question that I think the CAB, and I certainly have keep coming up against, and what I think that I'm hearing from the CAB as well, is we got a plan, we got these pathways. How are we showing that those pathways match up, our programs and efforts with those pathways are matching up and equitable? What does that look like? And that's what I'm struggling right now. And how does that look? And when we hand the commission these pathways, they're going to be able to say, yes, I see how that equity lens was used and focused as one of the elements in what we evaluated in creating these pathways. And I think that's been kind of what's hanging over folks' head is, when do we know we've done that?
Yeah, I think that's a great concern. And I'll start off, and Matt, feel free to chime in with any other thoughts. I think, well, I would propose that a monitoring and evaluation tool be created so that you all can see, well, these are our goals or the metrics that we created, and this is what we're doing in order to get there, so that you can evaluate that along the way. I think someone mentioned earlier, like having check marks or something, so that okay, we've done the equity piece, we've done the sustainability piece, we've done the others, so that you all can really see what you've done and what else you have left to do. That would be my thought, or my suggestion, is to put together what I've done in the past, a log frame, for example, which helps to track the things that you all say you're going to do and how you're getting there, just to kind of double checks and balances.
I really think that's what this group's looking to have at the end of this process, so that they can use that, and that's included in the plan.
Mike, are you asking kind of like an equity like toolkit, so to speak, and something that you could use as like a scoring metric for projects?
I think I think what I'm trying to get to is one of the things that's bounced around inside the cab now for a long time has been we know that we have looked at these pathways and tried to develop them with equity as one of the components. But when you look at them, that's not readily available. I mean, Mary said it again today, that same thing is, how do we know how do we know that we've achieved this? And so what we're trying to do is come up with a method or a benchmarks that say, as we move through the development of the programs, we have achieved that. We have looked at that. That's one of the elements. Here's how it's embedded. It's transparent and it's visible. I'm still struggling with what that looks like. And I shy away from using words like checklist because I know that there's the negative connotation that it's like greenwashing. It's that same thing. And I have a reaction to greenwashing. So it's how do we know that we have truly engaged in the effort to address that in the totality of everything that we've done? And how do we convey that that is part of what we're doing? Because rightfully, that is what the commission is going to ask when we present their plan. Because that was what their resolution included. So what they're going to want to know is not only did we develop this plan, but how are we going to move forward and make sure that we've addressed that part of the resolution, which calls forth for the equity portion. And so I guess I still haven't gotten a handle and an understanding of if I hand this report to the mayor and commission, when are they going to turn around and what's their first question is, okay, show me the equity part and what are we going to show them? And it may not be their first question, it's going to be among their questions. So the first question is going to be, are we achieving the transformation? The second question will be, and how are we doing it equitably? And I don't have a good answer for them at this point. And that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great point. What I would suggest, I think that we need to sit down and think about, well, how we're defining equity and what different metrics we're using so that we can match it against the programs or the projects so that we can say, okay, this aligns with how we are defining equity or how our community defines equity. I've done that using a monitoring and evaluation tool, which is just like a metric or a spreadsheet of this is what the goal of the project was, is where the expected outcomes as they relate to equity. And these are all of the activities that we did. And now having another column to show, well, this is where we've documented it. This is the metrics that we're using to evaluate it. And I think that that's a critical piece just to make sure, and really just in all of our programs or projects, just so that we know that, we said that we did it, but we have to make sure that we did it correctly or we did it equitably.
Well, and Diamond, let me introduce to you Selah. Selah is with our inclusion office. That has been a lot of what their effort has been done, and they've been part of this process, their office. So I guess I'm coming back to how do we put that together physically? I mean, I know intellectually we're looking at it, intellectually we've talked about it, but what is that looking like in the report? And that's when I get right down to it, it's what's the deliverables that we're going to see that have that in there, and what does that look like? And that's what I still struggle with. And I'm not saying you have to have an answer today, but that is an answer that we have to have as we move forward. And the CAB, I think, y'all tell me, I'm hearing that from different members of the CAB, that's one of the things they felt has been the weak link in what we've done so far, is we don't have that hands-on, documented piece in this report yet. Am I overstating it, guys?
No.
No, that's about right.
And that's where we really do need y'all's help, because I get it. I got the presentation. I understand how the tool is there. Jim is a wonderful thing, by the way. If that's we have handed one of our subscriptions off to the inclusion office. We'll keep one ourselves and one, actually two of them ourselves, although I could be talked into having one to like planning or something like that, or maybe they can buy their own. And Matt, you can let me know how other people could access that information and what all they have, what they need to do to access that information if they do want to buy a subscription. But I'm still coming back to y'all need to help us because we're getting ready to put out this document, and I still feel like there's a hole in it. So what's that hole look like? How do we fill that hole? Okay, I stunned everybody to quiet.
I was just going to say I'll touch base with Matt and with Sam again and circle back with you also, Mike, with some thoughts.
And please include Selah in that same conversation.
Yeah, of course.
So I think it's really important that we go together. Selah, you're with us. Thank you.
I'm here now. Yeah, I apologize because there's a lot of information that I still need to catch up with in terms of the CAB plan, and but I mean, you're absolutely right, and you hit the nail on it. That the first, I think, maybe thing that I can help Mike with this team is establishing, like, organizationally, ACC Gov has defined equity, and what that kind of looks like in practice. We are working on a toolkit, so to speak, that has like a resource guide that has some a glossary of language, and just kind of understanding how you're looking at data, the way that you're engaging the community, the strategies, and how you're analyzing those implementations, and, like Diamond said, the accountability factor that comes after, and the feedback loop to continue to make sure that the community is involved from beginning to end, and then also behind the implementation. I just lost what I was going to say. Oh, but I will say that the process guide, I have been reading through that process guide that Jem has made, and there's a lot of great information in there that I think, in terms of what you're looking for to kind of close the gaps on some of the questions that you're asking, and how to move from A to B to C all the way through, and how to are you engaging the community in the way that you should be. And I think that this it is a helpful toolkit that I've found in what I've read so far. And I think overlaid with the map and the indicators there with that data, it's just going to be a matter of, I understand what you're saying, though, something tangible that you can feel like, okay, not to say we've checked the box, because we know equity isn't just checking a box, but also making sure that you are, as you said, Mike, hitting those benchmarks and thinking through the questions that need to be asked when we're talking about who benefits, who burdens from changes in policies that we're making.
And just to kind of follow through on that, some of what I've heard from people have been suggestions, for example, of having a simple arrow up, or a plus, a minus, and a zero. And they've had things like we might have it. Does it affect ACC government only? Does it affect the community? Does it affect both? Does it affect business? Does it affect minorities or low income? Or they've had kind of a column effect, and then they've figured out what those elements should be, and then they show a plus or minus for how each one of those pathways potentially could move forward or go. I don't know if that's the best tool for doing that or conveying that. That's one thing people mention. So that's why I bring it up. Is just I think people are looking for that tangible. What tells us that either a list of benchmarks that are part of that, the process tool may need to be an addendum to the report that then has a summary page of that approach, but something that people know, okay, that's what we're going to do when we start moving from these pathways. We've got 60 something of them. We're going to move from one pathway and develop that full idea. Well, how's that process going to go?
I remember one of the plans, I don't remember which one it was that we looked at, had that plus minus zero, which I know we talked about and we liked because it was specifically targeted at the equity piece. And it was, okay, does pursuing this help with our goals for equity? Does it hurt or is it neutral? So it does seem like, I mean, I always thought that was interesting as an upfront thing, but then of course, then the next step is when you actually go to implement that, you do need to have processes or questions that you're going to ask every time to remind yourself, you know, it's not enough to just have it in the plan, this is what we anticipate, but then when it actually comes to implementing it and you get more into the details of how you're going to do that, to say, you know, as I think as Selah said, you know, who is this impacting and how is it impacting them? And if it's not, you know, and can we impact in a positive way more than we, you know, just continuously, it's just going to have to be a real commitment, I think, you know, that we continuously ask that question because things are going to change too. So, but yeah, I do like that just as an initial kind of evaluative tool as far as what we're planning to do. I like that plus minus zero to just kind of give us an initial idea of what the potential is, but then the follow through is obviously the most important thing.
Was that the Cleveland plan? Was that the one that you did? Matt, you may recall.
I actually jumped off. He had another call. But
Okay.
yeah, so I think in the beginning when we had all of these policies, I did have them in a spreadsheet and they were ranked by feasibility, equity, all of that. I don't know if anyone had a chance to look at it and if that is something, because that's basically what was in the Cleveland plan. It was like the policy and then how it was ranked according to all of these, you know, criteria. I don't know if that's helpful to bring back out and maybe put something more like that in the plan, or if that would, I don't want to cause like a disruption and just throw that into the mix and make it more confusing. But we do have them kind of bring down, and I and Matt as well kind of went through like the first ranking. I don't want to say that I'm like the end all be all person who ranks it, but we could hand it back over and figure out what to do from there. I don't know if that would be more. We can also talk about it later, but
So is there a feeling on the cab that you'd like, I mean, I do remember that now that you brought that back up. You had like 6 categories, then you had 3 other categories that were there. Cab, do y'all want them to bring that back out? It doesn't have to be a weight system. It could be a plus minus zero system if that's what the preference is. But it could be an additional kind of tool out to the side to show how we did each one of those major areas.
Plus minus zero is still a weight system though, but I mean but that's a nice simple thing that people understand.
So I'm going to say that reaching out, like what has been worked on is, you know, outreach to make sure that everyone's included. But the communities that are most at risk and most burden will be the hardest to reach. And this plan will be the most foreign to those who need the help the most. Probably when I end up engaged in conversations with people, we end up talking about why all the bus stops don't have covers. And so it's like this real like boots on the ground, have to worry about this right now. I think we're asking for a kind of input that isn't even possible, you know, and so that weighting the system maybe seem crude, but is more positive as far as it's a kind of input.
So does the cab want South Face to bring back and Green Links to bring back that weight system, and that now that we have the established pathways to take a look at the weight system now as an exercise? All right, they'll maybe take a vote. All right, Amy, yes or no?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be nice now that we have more done to probably look at it again. I mean, I think the first time it was introduced, you know, we didn't have as much done. So I think to go back and look at it again and see how it fits with the plan as it is now, I think that'd be worth doing. That's a yes.
Okay, I called out Amy. Charlie, what do you think?
You really want me to think?
Yeah, what you think? You do that all the time.
I know, yeah. If it'll help, I'm not, I sort of got lost in the conversation of whether it'll help or not, so pardon
Okay,
me.
John,
I'm on the
how
fence.
about you?
I'm neutral.
All right. No Switzerland's here. All right, John.
Yeah, I mean, I think if it would help, yes. I'm just not personally. I just don't know how much it will help at this point, but certainly, you know, if it will, yeah.
I wanted to just jump in real quick, Mike. This concept for an exercise, are you thinking it's the tiered system that we just put together that people said yes and no to, that we did the last survey round? Is that what we're voting on?
No, what it is taking that. So we've tiered them out, and we got 3 tiers. But then to take a look under that, use that weight system to take a look at the, I guess, or some system, either a plus minus, at those factors that you showed us initially, because there were several good ones that were in there. And I think what I'm hearing the cab wants is to be able to look at that and say we think it either is enhancing the goal, it's neutral to the goal, or it's a negative to the goal. Now that being said, I'm kind of hard to see any of those things that are negative to the goal that we're trying to achieve. So is it we ought to at least, I guess, look at them is what people would like to know. But then are they going to become some kind of factor? I think what Amy and I were talking about or seeing is that Cleveland plan where they had at least acknowledged that this could have some effect in these different areas.
And I
So
think that
again,
was the thing to me that was kind of interesting is that you see something that we have as a tier 1 and it's like, wow, this is a really great thing to do. But then when you look at it under these different categories of potential effect, to see that, wow, it has a really positive effect on this, but it actually has a negative, this is seen as really good, but it actually has a negative equity effect. I mean, I don't know, I can't give you an example, but to me, it was just it was a very quick way to look at everything and be able to kind of sit there and see which ones did have, we anticipate would have a positive impact in terms of our equity goals, and which ones are neutral, and which ones might be negative. And then, okay, well, it's negative on that, but it was just an easy for me, especially if you're not very familiar with things, it kind of helped to begin to look at things and understand, just understand the effects and how to prioritize and how to think, depending on what's most important to you, if I'm a citizen looking at the plan and I may have a couple of things that are most important to me, it gives me a way to quickly look through it and say, well, the people who put this together think these are the things that are gonna do the most for what I care about. So it was just helpful, at least it seemed like to me it was, when I looked at that plan.
so at this point, what I could suggest maybe is that Maria, you and Matt and I and the respective teams get together, so with Sayla, and kind of go over, because you're hearing what we're saying. We're looking for some physical manifestation that shows that this has been addressed. And right now we don't have it. And what does that look like? And you've heard some different ideas. People are open to anything that enhances the plan and conveys the information. So why don't we get together and kind of try to come up with something and put that out to folks to see what they think. Does that sound good to the rest of the cab? I won't call Amy out this time.
Yeah.
All right. So
And Mike, can I ask a real quick question?
absolutely.
Maybe just elaborate for everybody, because it's been a while now. What's the basic schedule for all this? When does this get?
Well, the goal was
You muted yourself.
I muted.
how did I do?
I muted.
No,
me,
that was
but
me.
I muted him at the same time.
Hey, that was cool, Tom. So I'm glad you asked that question. So here's what we have is we're looking at Valentine's Day. The Sustainability Office will receive the preliminary document that they're working on. So about a month from now, on the 16th, which is the CAB meeting, we would have the equity section. On March 4th, the draft would come back to our office that includes the equity section. On the 16th is when we're looking at trying to release the draft to the CAB for comment, with final comments due the 1st of April. March 16th, yeah. April 1st, we were looking at the CAB final comments being due and the final draft of the plan by April 20th, because from there, it's probably going to take us 2 months to get it to the commission, to the public, and back to the commission for approval. Because anything that we do and we get our final plan done and the CAB recommends moving forward, is going to be at least 2 months. So I was looking at a May 10th work session for the commission, a couple of weeks for public review, a couple of weeks for revision, submission of the agenda item, and trying to vote on it in July. And that's ambitious. I suspect it'll be more like August, but I'm trying to keep it from keeping on creeping up, because as y'all know, we've been at this for 2 years. So come July, we'll be at it for 2 years, or August, I guess, we'll be at this for 2 years.
And it's been a fun 2 years, right?
Thank you, Tom.
Mike, we have elections in May. We have local commission elections in May and some other. I mean, you just think about when you present it for some portion of the commission. Somebody will be running for some commission seat whenever they settle all that. Those are May.
Are you thinking maybe we do June and July? July and August?
Yeah, I mean, you might naturally have to push it back. I would just consider the election as a time where the commissioners won't focus, that they have to focus on that particular time, and then after that, it'll be done.
And the fun part about that is May and June are budget time. April, May, and June. So, and they're focused on budget. So I think I honor, yeah. The main thing that I want to try to do is just keep us on track so we get the plan. If we have to delay getting it to the commission for a workshop and out to public review and back, I'm also a little concerned that we tend to, I was trying to avoid releasing the public comment section during the summer when most people are traveling, and try to get some more, useful feedback, because summer's as y'all know, in Athens, we live by that rhythm. So summer's kind of like Christmas. You don't get a lot done if you're trying to get out to the general community. So, but the main thing is I just think we need to keep moving. So that's what I'm trying to do. But thanks, Mary. You're right. That's going to be another add to this coming spring is election season, especially election season where 3 of our commissioners don't have districts. Okay. Any more thoughts or comments? I guess, is this the conclusion and wrap up? We'll even get out early, guys.
But it was more than 5 minutes.
Well, unless there's great discussion, y'all, you've got my cell phone number, so call me if there's some things you want to talk about more in detail. Maybe we can get together. I'd be happy to hear if anybody wants to talk to me about other ideas or to expand upon what we've talked about, and then I'll try to work with everybody, the South Face and South and Green Links, to set up a meeting. And I guess the next time you'll hear from us will be mostly focused on that equity section at the February CAB meeting. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We appreciate it. Thank you really for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Mike, for letting me stand in for Michael.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Mary. It's always great to see you.
Yep, see you soon.
Take care.